is, there we go. So last week we kind of went through like some fundamentals of the fundamental fore and aft. This time the more of the level 2 and level 3 understanding of it. It was actually a pretty good conversation that we had, and I kind of like to keep that going if I can. So today it's going to be more, we're going to be working more on a granular level and more of what a level 3 understanding and above would be of the fore aft relationship. Cool. All right. So what did we do last week? We talked about, the one key thing that I think was the most important was that the movements adjustments of pressure should be controlled by the ankles, and primarily by the ankles, and then complemented by movements in the rest of the body. And guess what? We're going to be doing a lot more of that today, but it's going to be on a more granular level. Movement of pressure along the ski affects where the skis bend and they ultimately grip. I was talking about where you put more pressure on the back of the ski, it makes the back of the ski grip more than the front. Put more pressure on the front of the ski grips in the front, and the ski in the back gets lighter and swings around a little bit quicker. And then we kind of talked about what our guests do that are effective and ineffective, kind of in kind of broad strokes. We won't be kind of doing that much tonight because, frankly, this is already like a big presentation. I'm going to try to get it done in just an hour. Okay. All right. So let's go ahead. We're going to start by reviewing our reference angles. And so we've probably heard these things like a million times that the skier maintains his forward lean relative to speed, terrain, and conditions. And then lower leg and ankle flex angle should match the angle of the spine. And I'm going to kind of throw those out there. I think they're in the technical manual. I think those are pretty good guidelines for the most part, but I'm going to say that I would challenge those and on an instance basis, but as not necessarily true all the time. There are going to be times where we're going to be one or more, the ankle is going to be bending more than the hips, and there are going to be times where the hips are going to be bending more than the ankles. It depends on when and where we are in a turn and what kind of terrain, speed, and conditions we're running into. Okay, I'm just saying that as an out. This is not necessarily where this presentation is leading. That is my personal view, is that yes, we always want to be staying forward as much as possible, and the lower leg angle should match that of the spine. I think that's a relative term. That's a really good level 2 understanding, but when you get into level 3, you're going to find out that, yeah, that's not always true. Okay, I think AJ can concede that also. Fore aft. What does fore aft control? It controls the stability of our fore aft balance, our ability to move along the length of the skis is basically what that means. It controls the self-steering characteristics of the skis. So in level 2 and level 3, level 1, level 2, we really don't talk about the skis as much as a turner as we do in level 3. It's very important that we talk about how the skis are designed to turn, and as we move up higher levels, because people don't always have a strong understanding. And then this is also controls our ability to balance on a slippery surface. So we have the first person there, and he's standing on the ground. And if you notice, there's like all these vectors. So you have gravity, and then you have the surface, and then you have surface 1, which counteracts how gravity is pulling us forward. And then you have another one which counteracts how our gravity is pulling us down to the back. And those are kind of all equal, and they offset each other if you're moving. But as soon as you start moving on skis, that same posture can't be kept anymore. We have to, because the skis are now, if we did that, the skis would now move faster than the body would. They would outrace our body. So we have to position our body in that third figure so that we're over the equipment to allow the body to move with the equipment instead of allowing the skis to move out from underneath us. Does that make sense to everybody? I'm moving kind of quick here. I'm sorry. Yes, no, not up and down.
Yep,
Cool.
that's good.
All right, good. Groovy. All right. So I'm going to go back to this thing about controlling the skis self-turning. So we all know that the skis are designed to turn, right? This thing. I mean, after all these years, like I tell all my clients, after all these years, you think they would make a ski that would be able to turn itself. That's a hope and dream anyway. So, but how we move back and forth affects, again, what we talked about last week is where the ski bends in relationship to the snow. So if we apply forward pressure to the ski turn, obviously the ski is going to bend more in the front and the ski is going to turn more quickly. Forward posture starts in the start of the initiation to bend the front of the ski, and the skis turn more readily. And then as we move through the turn, the ski, where you move more to mid to aft pressure, it makes the ski tend to turn less. Mid and aft pressure and completion to bend the middle to the back, and it slows and or stops the skis from turning. This is an important concept as we start identifying what our clients are doing when they're back, and the reason why they have to do all the shady movements that they do in order to get the skis to turn is because they're in a position now where the skis are not going to be able to turn very well. Okay. Again, we're kind of just lining it up. So here is an example that I ripped from a Ron Kipp video, or Ron Kipp presentation I did, where he talks about how the skis bend at the beginning of the turn. You can see where the ski is bending on the left over there. I got like a little red thing there to show it. You see how the tip is bending a lot more than the tail is. And then as they move through the turn, the skis are bent more in the middle as they reach the gate. And then as they exit the turn, you can see that pressure is definitely moving to the back. And then when the final vintage there, the skis are bending almost entirely from the back and the tips are a little bit off the ground. Okay. This is normal in on most skiing or all skiing. And racing is particularly more so. But this is what I want you guys to notice right off the bat, is that does the posture of the, or I should say, does the ankle part of the ankle angle of the ski boots change that much throughout the turn?
Yes, it does.
Okay. Does the upper body and the knee joint change much through the turn?
Yeah.
Cool. Anybody have any reasons why?
Well, you're moving the center of mass
Yeah.
to put pressure on different parts of the ski.
Yeah.
So that like by the end of the turn, the ankles are totally open. And that skier, whoever that is actually sitting down.
Yeah, kind of sitting down, right? But the skis are relatively flat at the end of the turn, right? So she's not really turning much anymore. She's kind of transitioning. But when you go to the first one up there, she's definitely starting to apply pressure to the front of the ski. And as the ski engages, it definitely begins to bend. Okay. This is going to be an important concept on how we move along the length of the ski and what is required. Go ahead, JJ.
If the skier were to continue to pressure the front of the boot, the front of the ski, there's no place for that person to go. There's no place for that skier to go. The front of the ski will continue to track in an arc, causing the back of the ski to likely break loose And
Yeah.
then you start to get into all sorts of trouble. So to allow yourself, to allow the skier to then start the cycle all over again, there has to be that release of pressure, ever so slight, from the front. And that's that open ankle you see in the last frame. Then the cycle begins all over again.
Yeah, it does. And I think the key thing to remember about this is we're talking about bending the ski, but ultimately we're talking about trying to get the ski to grip and where we want the ski to grip. We don't want it when we're getting towards the end of the turn, we don't want it to grip at the beginning of the turn anymore. It's just going to turn more.
Exactly.
Right. At some point in time, we got to get the ski to slow down or stop rotating or stop turning. And we do that by moving the pressure back. Cool. Here is a really good example. Now I'm gonna take two of these things out. I'm going to say that the hips and the knees going to relatively remain the same. This is not like our previous skier here, who has a lot of relationship changes throughout the turn here, mostly because the ski's got to come up underneath them at some point in time. But if we keep the skis, or I'm sorry, if we keep the knee and the hip and the spine relationship the same, we move the base of support around by using our ankles. And this is just an illustration of how that happens. Okay. We flex more in the front, move the base of support forward. I'm sorry, if we move the base support back, should have put arrows here. Move the base support back. If we unflex the ankles or just static over the top, it's moving the base supports directly underneath us. And as we move our skis forward, like here, the skis are moving forward. They're back here and they're more forward here in the front. We begin to move the space of support more forward again in basic relationship to the rest of the body. Because remember, the key thing about this is the ankles are what controls our ability to pressure. And the rest of it is stuff we use to complement the pressure, complement what our ankles are doing. All right.
Wait, you're saying that the knees and hips don't change.
What I'm saying is not necessarily that's always true. I would never say never. What I'm saying is if all things were equal and you had the only thing you could change, the only thing you should change is the ankles.
Okay, but then that ideal relationship of the ankle should be parallel to the spine does not apply
Yeah.
at all times.
That's
Okay.
why I said I don't really like that and it's really good reference point for level 2. But when you move to higher levels, that's not really much of a reference anymore. Because you're going to find that the ankles are doing a lot more work than the rest of the body is. And there are going to be times where that reference is it's not true. And then listening to a lot of, podcasts and stuff from overseas, like from Riley McGashin and from Tom Jelly, they're like, hey, there are a lot of times where that ankle might be more upright than your spine is, especially at the end of a turn, which is what's illustrated right here. Matter of fact, that's like for them, that's a requirement. You have to do that. All right, so what does this all lead up to? This is going to be our thing of the day, the functional ankle tension. So we have to have tension in our ankles in order to move. If we don't have ankle tension in our ankles, we really cannot move forward and aft. This makes sense to everybody?
Yep.
Yeah, cool. So everybody stand up real quick. All right, so pull your feet up. Just stand up, kind of lean against something in the back. Like I'm gonna lean on my desk right here. And pull your feet, your front parts of your feet off the ground. Okay, so they're off the ground. And then gently flex your feet, your knees until, and your waist until kind of like the front part of your ski or your feet finally touch. But there's not a lot of pressure on them. Just kind of leave the pressure on the ankles. Everybody feel that? Cool. Now just relax your ankles. Boom. I immediately fall backwards when I do that. So again, kind of keeps your legs straight, pulls your toes up, and then flex your knees and your hips until you just barely touch the ground with your balls of your feet, and then release your ankles. So what that does is it kind of illustrates how powerful our ability to use this ankle tension is in our skiing, how much of a requirement it is. It allows the skier to effectively move the base support much faster instead of just the center of mass. So how do we move our center of mass? A lot of ways. How do our guests tend to move their center of mass?
Shoulders first.
Yeah, they don't use their ankles. They usually use their knees and hips, don't they? I would say that's probably mostly true. They braced off the back of the ski boots, and they're not really using their ankles that much. We see this all the time, right? And of course, the fastest is if we can move both the center of mass and the base support at the same time. So we can move one like this. We pull the skis underneath us and move our center of mass forward. But again, that's all required by that ankle tension. We have to have ankle tension. We don't have.
So you're talking,
don't have
Gumby,
it.
you're talking about the Bob Barnes thing of move your ankles and use skis back to before initiating the turn.
Yeah. So if you go to the technical manual, they actually say this. Where's it at? It says, oh, of course, I moved away from that little section. Pressure control, pressure. Okay. In a combination of movement, the skier shifts the center of mass and the base support in opposite directions at the same time. Body moves in a manner previously described, but blah, blah, that's what we've been talking about. And since the movements work against each other, the redistribution of pressure along the ski happens even more quickly. So it's not just pulling his feet back, but moving your center of mass forward too. Like this. That's what I was kind of illustrating with this guy here. If all things were equal, you move your center of mass forward in relation to your skis by using your ankles. But you can also extend your knee and hips, and that will move your body forward too. Cool? Any questions?
I would say that the movement of the center of mass is not an up and over. It's not this and this. It's this. It's a forward lateral movement. It's not getting there by going up and over.
Oh, well, thank you, because I forgot. I have more visuals. Thank you. That's what happens when you get into these things, right? All right, everybody see a kid here?
Yep.
This is from a Ron Kipp video too. Pink. You could say that really he wasn't moving He's not really moving the relationship between his hips and his knees that much, but he's really moving his center of mass forward by moving his flexing his ankles in the ski boots. Of course, he weighs like 12 pounds, which is why his ski boot isn't moving that much. I love this illustration. I looked everywhere for this illustration. I could never find it. Cool. Thank you for reminding me, JJ.
Yep.
Does that help you answer that question, Rebecca?
Yes.
Yeah, yeah. How we can quickly move forward. All right. So, of course, now we got to get into anatomy because, you know, how many of you heard the tibialis anterior? Raise your hands. Yeah. Yeah. So this is a very cool one. You can put your finger right on it, actually. So you guys know where your shin bone is? You can reach down and just to the, on my right leg is just to the right of that shin bone there. And as I dorsiflex my foot, I can feel it. That is a tibialis anterior. And if you look down at your foot, it not only does it dorsiflex the foot, but that particular thing also, if you notice how it attaches to the inside of the foot, your inside of your, it kind of grows around and connects to that talar joint you have underneath. And it actually inverts the foot as you dorsiflex, which is not always ideal, right?
So I have to tell you a funny story about the anterior tibialis. I had a group lesson with 3 surgeons. So I figured, okay, I can talk about the anterior tibialis, that you should just sort of focus on putting tension on that. And they just looked at me and said, we're on vacation.
Yeah, we're on vacation. Well, then you better listen carefully. So if it dorsiflexes and inverts the foot, we need to have some control on that evert versus invert. So of course, there's another one that helps it, which is a peroneus longus, which is on the outside of the foot, and that one is just kind of like underneath and a little bit to the right on your right foot of the anterior, and that's what helps you evert the foot. Now, which one of these is bigger?
Well, longus is longer.
It's longer, yeah. And it does other things too, right? There's like a bunch of longuses on that side. You got the digitalis longus too, which is what pulls your toes up. There's lots of other things too, but we're only going to talk about the peroneus right now. And of course, I had to add in what our ankles do, right? And you guys understand that the ankle is made of 2 joints. One of them is a subtalar joint, which allows us to do this. And then we have, I'm just going to call it the ankle joint because it's got some other name that nobody ever remembers, and I'm never going to call it that. That goes like this. So that the ankle joint part is a higher part, and it's more of a hinge joint. And the subtalar joint is more of a slip joint. I think they call it a modified slip joint because it's actually got 3 faces on it and allows the foot to invert, evert, and other things too. But really, those are the 2 most important ones for us. All right, enough anatomy. So we were talking about how we can dorsiflex, how we can add that ankle tension to our feet. Okay. So again, stand up real quick. Get in your kind of skiing posture. Pull kind of your toes up. I mean, activate that dorsiflexion in there and just move forward and backwards. And then turn yourself slightly to one side. I don't care which way, just turn your upper body to one direction and then do that same movement. And notice where the pressure on your feet end up.
On the side.
Huh?
It's more on one side or the other rather than the whole foot.
Yeah, so that's that kind of crossover move that we talk about all the time, where you're moving from one side to the other, right? So I want you to keep that in mind as we move on, because, you know, we're talking about one fundamental basically today. We're not really talking, we'll talk later about how they all interact with each other, but we're really only talking about the one fundamental. What you should have noticed is that the pressure moved from the outside of one foot, or the kind of the center of one foot, to the inside of one foot, and then from the center of one foot, the other foot, to the outside of that foot. You guys feel that? Rebecca, yes?
Yeah,
All right, cool. All right, which foot did you feel like had more pressure?
the
Would have been
outside.
like the new inside ski or the new outside ski? Or the new outside? If you were pretending you were skiing there and you're moving from one foot to the other, and kind of this foregonal movement, which one ends up having the most pressure on it?
The new outside.
I kind of feel like it's on the new inside ski.
Let me try that. Yeah, you're right.
This is just an example of how these fundamentals cannot function in a vacuum. We got to have them all at the time, because if
No,
that was true all the time, we'd be in trouble, right? That's no good. But the general movement that we are always talking about is kind of this countered position, or kind of a little slight coming out of the old turn. The skis are turned more than our body is, and then we move, we release and move. In this case, we're only going to talk about fore aft movement, but we release and pull the skis, pull our toes, pull the skis backwards, our boots backwards. We activate that functional ankle tension and allow ourselves to move down the hill with our upper body. Cool. I just made up a new word. I'm going to patent this word. It's going to be called foregonal.
I hate to tell you, but we've been using that in the Eastern Division.
You guys are going to have to pay me a stipend from now on. I looked it up. I couldn't find it anywhere. I was like, foregonal movement in skiing. I was like, what?
I've been hearing that for the last 10 years, so.
Yeah, we've been using it for many years.
Oh, I think everybody has too. But I think I like it because it's kind of diagonal to where the skis are going, right? So I got the red arrow there, or where the ski is going. And then I got the blue arrow, which is where the guy is kind of going. Now, if this was the perfect photo, the pole plant would be going the same direction as the blue arrow, but it's not, because, you know, maybe he's ran into something that makes him got to do something different. So I don't know. All right. And this is kind of what something that Gordon brought up. So I bring it back up. So this is kind of like a tangent. Moderating the fore-aft balance influence of terrain. That's not right. Moderating terrain's influence on fore-aft is what it should say. Well, that's terrible. All right, my language skills are awful.
No,
And the point
that's
is-
correct, but the terrain influences the
Yeah, the
fore-aft.
terrain should be influencing fore-aft, not the other way around. Moderate fore-aft influence. No, I don't. It doesn't read right to me. Anyway, functional ankle tension allows us to quickly move the base support relationship to center of mass as we experience changes in terrain and vice versa. I think think that all of you have run into clients where they get into bumps and they really struggle. Like one of the last lessons I had this last year, I really got through to the daughter and the father, but the grandfather was like scared of bumps and he didn't do them until the very end. And then it was like, he's got no ankle tension. So his ability to do the bumps was like significantly, it was almost a terrifying experience for me to watch because he couldn't stay forward. So the ankle relationship needs to change. And this is another perfect example of, everybody knows the spine and the ankle relationships. I'm going to say the ankle relationship's pretty much the same the whole way, but the spine changes a lot. So this one's another one where I kind of fly in the face of this idea of spine angle needs to match shin angle, because it doesn't. And she does that. There's like a yellow line there. It shows where her center of mass moves in relationship to her skis. That's an effort to keep that part of her center of mass moving as little as possible while her skis do all the work. That idea of the duck where all the, or the goose or whatever, where all the busy work is happening below the surface of the water. And, but you don't see anything happening up above, which is kind of key for doing bumps. Any questions on that? We'll move on then. Terrain changes influences posture. And I think you could argue this, right? Ankle tension required to compensate for terrain changes. Because if you don't use any ankle tension, you'll go backwards as the terrain steepens. That's kind of a bad idea. As terrains get steeper, stance must compensate to continue pressure on the fronts of the skis. We have to be able to get the fronts of the skis to bend. If we don't do that through ankle tension, we're going to be kind of in trouble. Now, there are some folks that will argue that since the center of gravity is over the front part of the ski in steeper terrain, that is what's going to allow you to bend the ski and more towards the front of the ski. Kind of threw that green arrow in there, kind of remind us of that. And again, I'm going to argue that depends. That depends. And it kind of goes back to that girl back here. There are times where she's extended. And I wouldn't necessarily say her center of mass is over her base of support, except from a gravitational standpoint, where you drew a line straight down. Yeah, then it's kind of over the two tips of her skis. But what do we tend to teach our students? Or guess? Tend to teach them as a terrain changes, we tend to move forward. We need to move forward. This is our body angle, and the terrain changes, our body needs to go with it. What I'm arguing is that that's not necessarily always true, because it changes the relationship of gravity on the front parts of the skis too. That's from a physics standpoint. Cool. I'm willing to argue with anybody. Come on, where's the East Coasters?
Well, you know, my only argument, and it's a minor one, is that we tend to say that because the vast majority, 99.99% of our students don't even have that forward pressure.
No.
Going back 3 slides ago to they control their center of mass through their hips and knees, not their ankles. So it's sort of a default stance that we take, or default answer we give, that get to the front, get to the front. I think for our higher level students agree that it's not always where we ought to be, but it's sort of the default answer.
It kind of is the default answer, isn't it? We kind of run into these all the time. You always got to be forward. You got to be forward. You got to be forward. Well, until you're not, you're too far forward. But nobody ever is, so it doesn't really matter, right? So yeah, I think that's the argument I would make here is we're not always needing to be leaning forward as we're moving down the hill, but we should be encouraging that kind of movement so that they don't extend like their ankles, knees, and hips as the terrain changes and they lose that relationship or ability to turn. Cool. All right. All right. Fore aft relationship to other fundamentals. First things to remember, bending requires that the skis are on edge. You think we can't bend the ski that's flat, right? And we can't change directions as a skier if the skis are flat. We could change the skis in relation to our body, but it does not change the direction of our bodies. Body's going to remain going the same direction. Increasing edge and rotation of the skis increases pressure. Anybody have any reason why?
Increasing edge and rotating.
Well, the more edge you have, the less surface you have that's interacting with the snow.
Sure.
Rotating, I don't know why it would increase the pressure.
Rotation does the same thing.
Why?
It turns the ski faster, which puts the ski more in a relationship counter to the direction of travel, which is going to increase pressure. But this is all in real. Remember, when we get to this stage, we're not always talking about one fundamental anymore. We got to talk about two or three or more. So steering is an edge ski that's also pressured and using rotation to ski to help you turn the ski. And I'll get to it here in a second. There's another reason why too, but as the ski turns and turns away from the direction of our upper body travel, that's where pressure is felt. And again, there's two different kinds of pressure. There is the pressure that we feel, and then there is the physics pressure, which is pressure as force over a surface area. So as we put the ski more and more on edge, that decreases the surface area and you feel more force along that smaller area.
I understand that, but I don't
Yeah.
understand how rotation increases the pressure.
We have to have pressure. We have to still have pressure. We still have to have edging. And again, it turns the ski away from our direction of travel, which is what increases our perception of pressure.
Okay, so it's not that it actually increases the pressure, but the perception.
Well, you could argue that any perceptual increase in pressure is also physical too. It's I'm gonna admit this, Rebecca. I'm struggling with a lot of these ideas too. I understand it because I feel it, but at the same time, I'm going. I need to find some relevance too, and I might be a couple of years away from that. All right. Because pressure management is also, well, we'll get that here in a second. All right. Here it is. The good thing is the skis are almost always on edge. So we don't really have to worry too often about a flat ski trying to turn a flat ski. They're strongly interconnected. Edging and pressure is. Fore aft pressure affects where the skis bend and therefore where they grip when edged. Higher edge angles increases the pressure along the whole ski. And it's really, so I got this little illustration here showing how the ski surface area decreases the more that we increase edging. And then rotation influences pressure too. So rotating the ski also affects pressure along the ski. And this is that idea of rotational pressure. Now I want you to think about a ski. This is my ski. And as I'm rotating it using my feet, and it's on edge, right? As I'm rotating it, what happens to the tip pressure versus the tail pressure? And this might be the answer to your previous question.
Oh, yeah, okay, so the pressure moves from the tip along the length of the ski to the tail eventually.
Yeah, eventually it does. When we take rotational pressure off of the tip, it'll move along the base of the ski to the tail. If you're in the initiation part of it, we also use a rotational pressure to increase tip pressure and decrease tail pressure. And that's going to allow us to skip the ski to dig quicker. Does this make sense?
Starting to make more sense.
Yeah, I've been playing with this concept for a couple years now. And I just call it rotational pressure. So we increase and decrease pressure by rotating our legs on an edge ski. It's kind of like steering, except steering, I feel like we're steering this way. But this is more of that. How can we get that tip of that ski to dig more or dig less?
I wonder if it, because we're rotating our skis, is it greater, and you're doing it around an arc, is it greater centrifugal force and a smaller unit area? Because you're not here, you're not on this much, balancing on this much, you're balancing on this much. And so that pressure is really that greater centrifugal force on a smaller unit area that you have.
Yeah, that's one thing we really haven't talked about too much, is that kind of multiplier effect of that centrifugal forces that we feel. You know, I mean, everybody, this is one of the key things that I always want to bring up is when we're standing there on the ground, and you've probably done this before where we've been with a client, we've lifted the tips off the snow, and then we tell them pressure the front of your boots. How much real tip pressure do you feel there? Because I'm going to be honest with you, I've done it before and I don't feel a lot of difference. But as you're moving and these centrifugal forces build, these become force multipliers, and all of a sudden the skis bend a lot. And part of that is, you know, when I'm standing there and I'm holding their tips up, I say pressure the fronts of the boots. I'm doing it over a large surface area, so I'm not feeling a whole lot. But as soon as you put that ski on edge and you pressure the tips, now you're really focusing more pressure on a smaller area, which causes the ski to bend more. And that's the fact that the ski is also, you know, it's got camber in it, which helps put more pressure on the tips and tail anyway, just as a natural part. But yeah. And then but like I said, the idea is that I can, as I rotate the ski, I can also apply more tip pressure to the ski, which also going to allow you to dig more, which is probably why the ski a lot comes around more quickly that way when you add steering to it. Have I totally confused everybody on that?
Hey, Chuck, is it accurate to say when you rotate the ski, you're changing the direction of travel more quickly? And really the force we generate is the change in direction. From a physics perspective, we would travel in a straight line at the same speed unless acted on by an external unbalanced force.
Yes.
So to turn more quickly, more force is required. The force is delivered from the snow to the bottom of the ski. Is that the same thing?
I would say that that's more force that we feel, less. I wouldn't say necessarily require. I mean, force is, that's kind of like acceleration's force over distance. So if we're trying to do it really quickly, that's like fast acceleration, yeah, we're going to require more force in a smaller distance. But if we're doing it over a longer period of time, you require less force over a longer distance.
Correct, yeah. When we rotate the ski, we're accelerating that.
Right, we're accelerating. Anytime we change directions, that's considered an acceleration, just from physics, right? So yes, when we turn quickly, you're going to be experiencing more forces. You're going to have more forces working with you, and you're probably going to have to apply more forces too. The bend is going to be greater, but you could also argue that the bend, the greater majority of the bend is coming from gravity interaction with the snow.
So is that why people, or many of us, tend to make Z turns, because we sort of accelerate and then cannot handle that and therefore quickly try to go back?
I would say that that's probably fear more than it is physics, but yes. I do know that is that when they do those Z-shaped turns, they're feeling a lot of that pressure all at once. Because they're trying to use friction to slow down instead of deflection. Gordon, did I answer your question, any? Or was I misunderstood?
No, that's good.
All right. And then I just
Rebecca.
kind of threw this in as a preview, the big R versus little r. Of course, rotation is in everything. It's like I said, it's the milk that holds the cereal together. We rotate our ankles, we rotate our knees, we rotate our hips, we rotate our shoulders. That's how we flex and extend. So that's like a preview for later on. All right, magnitude of pressure. And I'm going to keep this one really simple because we already kind of talked about that magnitude with the more complicated magnitude that people have less understanding of with rotation and edging. This one is more of the magnitude that most of us understand, which is we have where we change the relationship between a base of support and center of mass by flexing and extending our legs. So we can mitigate forces by flexing our legs, or we can increase forces by extending our legs. And then, of course, fore aft pressure is moving the center of mass in relation to the base of support in a more longitudinal relationship along the length of the ski. Where the other one is we're moving the center of mass away from the skis. Among other things. And then ski to ski pressure. Foregonal movements naturally move weight to the inside ski, which you guys felt. So we have to consciously move pressure to the new outside ski. That's that long leg, short leg relationship. Otherwise, we are not going to do very well. Functional tension must be maintained, even on the inside ski. A lot of times what happens is we will let that inside ski drift forward by releasing that functional tension. And then that's going to we got to bring it back, get that functional tension back in order to transition to the new side. If we don't, we're going to be in trouble, right? It just takes a long, long time. And we've seen some examples of that before, of people who have to stick their leg out in order to pressure more on the outside ski and kind of release the inside ski. And then you get this long, this long kind of split step between the outside ski and the inside ski. All right, cues and drills to get our guests in the correct position. So I'm going to bring up one. And this is one that's along the functional tension part of it. Hey, Noriko, how you doing? Oops.
Hi,
Nope.
Gandhi. Hi, everybody.
All right. So this is kind of a famous one. Where you put them in this functional tension of their ankles. And then you kind of make them feel how the ski moves. This is another one too. Oop, oop. And that's it. Anybody else got any other ideas? This one's for you, Noriko, because I love this one. Ankle tension.
So one I do, I jokingly give my, but I'm not joking, is I give my students homework.
Yeah.
And I mean, the little kids seem to like it. And I say, okay, go home, stand in your stocking feet, put just your socks on, take a step and a half back from your kitchen table, your countertop, your dining room table, lift your toes to the ceiling, see where you go. Push your toes into the ground, see where you go. Next week, I want you to tell me, where did you go?
Yeah, I went with rollerblading this couple of days ago, and my God, my anterior tibialis was like sweating the first 10 minutes. Because in rollerblading, you really have to use that muscle a whole lot, and it really kind of builds it. But you know, this is, I really kind of believe in, we got to make sure that we exercise our feet too for skiing too, because once you get them in boots, it's almost like counterproductive to try to do it then. You
Yeah,
almost have to have strong feet before you get into ski boots, because my feet are not strong after I get done with the skiing season. They've like lost their strength. And then I know, because I got on a Bosa ball here about a week ago, and my feet hurt so bad for the rest of the day because they were so tired. Anybody else got any other ideas? Here's a shuffle step. Oh, you can't see. Shuffle steps, 1,000 steps.
I'm probably preempting a little bit, but Troy Walsh, who's the new national team member, I took a clinic with him a couple of months ago, and he said he likes to incorporate shuffling into, or foot to foot actually is what he said, in almost every lesson he has. So
I think
yeah.
that's, you know, shuffling's a really good exercise for building that ankle tension that you really kind of need to have. So I've got some examples, and we can look at them and notice where the ankle tension is at. So this is an Arlberg one. And really, what I want you to notice is how the relationship with the ski boot ankles Of course, I hear music, so I got to turn it off because it's distracting. But notice how his ankles, the ankle relationship, it's more forward, but it doesn't move in relationship like the other relationships do.
So I use this one. I use a double pole drag.
Mm-hmm.
Again, we're talking the interaction between, or the relationship between multiple fundamentals, but I use this for foot to foot, ski to
Yeah.
ski.
I use it for edging. I mean, I don't think it's wrong in a lot of ways, right?
Yeah.
I use it for building angles, right? I mean, you have to flex it in order to reach down the hill. And I think that might be what he's doing here too, but he's also kind of using it as a way to stay centered and pressure to the outside ski, which is I think what the primary thing here is when he's working in a wedge Christie like he is making sure that he gets pressure to the outside ski.
But you're right, his ankle stays pretty much the same.
They do. All right, and then I got old Jonathan here. You guys remember this one, don't you? I really pulled this one because of that foregonal movement that he has. But where does the movement originate? He doesn't really, his ankles stay about the same pretty much through the whole turn. And the movement comes from his upper body and is in the relationship of his knees and his hips.
Yeah, I was noticing that as well.
This is what Murmer calls the Brazilian butt lift.
Exactly.
It comes from sort of lifting the inside ski, moving the inside hip forward.
Of course, I'm sorry, I ripped this from a Jim Shaw video where he's talking about pressure control. So he's highlighting interaction.
I got a call.
I'm glad I got it all done, man.
Thank you.
No problem. Thank
Thank
you.
you. Are you going to put this on the chat so we can download it?
I am. I've got some more videos to watch if anybody wants to stick
Yeah.
around for a minute or
Oh
two.
yeah, I'll stick around.
Okay. I just was trying to get the presentation part of it done in an hour. I did pretty good.
You did.
All right. So here is another video. Of course, Jonathan again, more. These are going to be medium radius turns. But again, the thing that I want you to watch is that functional ankle tension that these guys build and how it doesn't really change much throughout the turn. Not as much as that the ankles remain the same, but they never really ever release the ankle. It never extends. I don't know who that first person is. I think this is Kate Howe.
Wow.
This is Jonathan.
More. Could you slow it down so that we could see what his hips are doing at turn initiation?
Hips. You all know what the hips do. All right, let's see if we can catch it. Gotta love Kate House skiing.
There's a lot of flexion and extension.
There is, but where is that really originating from?
More from the hips, really.
More from the hips and knees, isn't it? It's like right there. I mean, yeah, there's an extension of the ankle, but that relationship doesn't change very much. Like right there. I mean, look at that. It's crazy. Oops. Oh, shoot. It doesn't really change that much. Yeah, he's got like a lot of pressure there. He's got to kind of mitigate. But even then, there's just very minimal extension of the ankle as he moves into the next turn. Which means I mean, when we extend our knees and our hips, where does our body move?
Or, well, down the hill.
It's got to move forward, doesn't it? Yeah, forward and down the hill.
Extend your knees, you move forward, but hips, you move back, right?
No, knees make you go back if you flex them. Hips makes you go a little bit forward.
Yeah,
But if you extend your knees and you extend your hips, you're going to be moving forward. Have to move your center of mass forward. Just beautiful ski. All right. Here's some more. And you can be less critical of these guys, but these are all level 4 candidates from CSIA, Canadian Ski Instructor Association, which means they're hoping to be examiners and clinicians. And you can watch them too. And the first thing I noticed is that ankle relationship does not change very much. Very, very minimal as they transition from one turn to the next.
So most of the movement really is from the hips, not the knees.
Well, the knees are moving up too. I think.
Yeah, a little bit, but it's mostly the hips.
I'm going to say that they have to make room. Otherwise, the knees would come up and hit them in the chin, right? So they got to make room for that transition somewhere. And they just do it with a little bit of a upward movement. But that upward movement allows them to move forward too. And that was one thing I was going to add to the presentation is that since the center of mass travels a shorter distance down the hill than the skis do, it allows the center of mass to catch up to the skis whenever they get out in front of them. Has anybody got any questions? Did anybody learn anything new today?
You know what, Gumby? It's really interesting that you're pointing out like, oh, well, these are great skiers when their ankle angle don't really change. Angles don't really change because, as I mentioned last week, that there's not much, none of us have much ability the ability for us to dorsiflex is really limited. And when you're in ski boots, you can't really do invert and evert your feet anyway. Although I was just thinking today that when, our bodies are designed to walk, not to ski. All right, and then walking requires strong plantar flexion and also the ability to invert our feet. And skiing, we want the other side of dorsiflex, and then edging, we want evert our feet, mean lift the pinky up.
Right.
So it's like total opposite. We don't have too much range of motion. And then unless you mentioned about the rollerblading, in summertime, we don't really use those muscles. So with that in mind, if you all give me 5 minutes, I'll give you this great all-season exercise. I want you to try.
Oh, please do.
Trust me. First, you get your feet. Can you see my feet?
I see mine more
And-
closely, but yeah.
Yeah. So see, take one shoe and sock off so you can see your foot. And I can show you the quick exercise that you can do to increase just a teeny bit more of your feet movement. And the first thing you want to do, are we ready?
Ready?
Okay, first thing, put your heel on, here we go. You don't need to see me, you just need to see my foot. So put your foot something like this. Grab the second toe and wiggle it, just the top of it. And then just keep wiggling the first, the most distal joint, tip of it, just wiggle it. That's enough. The second one, big toe only have 2. Then you flex it and then get it straight. Flex it, get it straight 3 times, good enough. The third one bends around here, beyond where your toes split. That one goes both ways. Make sure your pinky toe gets all the way to the pinky toe flex. And extend, flex, and extend 3 times. Then plant your heel, grab your foot from side and knead it. Move your metatarsal bones. Again, 3 times up and forth. Then grab your ankle, grab the heel, and wiggle your this side. This is the joint right there. It's not a big joint, but this is the one of inversion and eversion.
Mhm.
And then the last one, here's your ankle bone. It's not really side, it's a little staggered, but you point and flex, point and flex, and point and flex. And then shake hands with your toes. I'm slipping my fingers into the toes and just wiggle around. Well, that takes about 2 minutes.
Okay,
One
get my
foot,
finger,
then you
get
do
my
the
fat
other foot.
fingers between my toes.
Yeah. If it hurts, don't push it. Then this, right, dorsiflex. I'm sure we all have TheraBand we got in physical therapy, right? For one injury or the other. Find something. I have a coffee table leg that I tied it. Okay. Something solid. I tied it. And here we go. And then just do this. Find a place you can plant your heel. And then this is the thing. There are 3 muscles that can dorsiflex your ankle. One is tibialis anterior that you mentioned that has the most of the power, but 2 other are also toe extensors. So
Yeah, we talked
I-
about talked about the peroneus longus. I didn't talk about the digitalis longus.
yeah, like make sure that I do not curl my toes. It's instinct that we curl our toes when you are uptight, but you got to extend your toes and then just lift, lift, lift. Dorsiflex. 3, 2, 1. Like 10 times 3 sets. It doesn't take much. And then same thing for eversion. Eversion is the one that lifts the pinky toe. Here. So I want to go this way. So I'm pulling this side and just rock your feet in the TheraBand and don't expect too much because there's not much ability to move your foot anyway. It's just the way it's designed. God didn't design our body to be a skier, right? Or evolution. Evolution made us to be able to run and walk. But those are little exercise. If you do it regularly, it should make us a little, even like 2 degrees more of the dorsiflexion should give us an advantage on all these fore-aft movement. Wouldn't it? So that was the exercise I wanted to show you guys. Let me know if you have any questions.
Yeah, do you have like diagrams of those that you can email or
No,
post?
but you can watch this video again. It's not that difficult.
That's right. I always sell them $5 a piece, so.
Right. Well, thank you.
Well, thank you. Marika, that was good. That was good.
Right,
So
so are we meeting in 2 weeks?
we're gonna meet again in 2 weeks. And I'm gonna send the email template to AJ, unless you're gonna take up the mantle there, Gordon. Ski to ski, baby.
Chuck, what would you like me to do?
I'll just put the presentation together for ski to ski.
Sure.
And this is more of the level 1 and level 2 understanding of ski to ski. So I'm
Okay.
not looking for like a lot of interoperational or interfundamental things. More of the basics of ski to ski movements.
Okay, and
Okay.
you're gonna